Good morning.
Good morning,
Shadow Home
Kay.
Secretary Yvette Cooper is with me now. Are they breaking the law or not?
Well, I think there's lots of people looking at the actual legislation. At the moment, it was only published yesterday. I think the key thing is what impact is it going to have on this serious problem that we've got, which is dangerous boat crossings that have really escalated, shot up in the last 4 years. We need action to prevent those boat crossings because it's putting lives at risk and is also ending up undermining our border security. So we've put forward proposals which we believe will make a huge difference, and we would like to work with the government on them. My worry is that what they put forward yesterday actually risks making the problem worse. It's similar to some of the things that they tried last year, and as we saw, the problem just got worse.
Numbers were worse when you guys were in charge.
No, actually they weren't. So there were issues in the Bosnian crisis.
The Home Secretary told us that the numbers were worse. Jack Straw said the numbers were worse when you guys were in charge.
The numbers were worse. We had the issue about the Bosnian crisis, so we did have the issues, I think, in the early 2000s.
Exactly.
And then the Labour government at that time took action to deal with those problems, and rightly so as well. Because I think what everyone wants to see is proper border security and also a properly managed and controlled system so the UK does its bit, alongside other countries, to support those who fled persecution and conflict. At the moment, we don't have either of those. So we haven't got a managed and controlled system. It is chaotic. And we also don't have border security in place because the criminal gangs are operating with impunity. We have to go after those gangs, and we would set up a new cross-border police unit in order to do so. Because you've had some reports, important reports here on Sky, about people smugglers who, journalists are able to find, well, why aren't the police? Because we need action against those gangs.
3/4 of them are in the UK.
I was shocked to see that report because that just shows really the scale of the problem in the UK. Otherwise, we've had often government trying to suggest, well, part of the reason they can't address the problem is because the networks are in France or in other countries. Well, what that shows is we really need this cross-border police unit to go after the gangs here, to go after the smugglers who are here, and also to work with the French authorities, Belgian authorities and so on, to go after the gang networks, really, that are operating this dangerous trade in people.
The British people, half of them, want migrants who are coming by this fashion to be sent straight back home again. The government is basically just doing what the people want.
Well, except that they're not, because they don't have any return agreements in place. So they're saying that they're doing it. Well, yeah, I know, but they're making it harder to get the return agreements, and they're not getting those in place because of the way they're doing this in a sort of chaotic, unilateral way. So we think you should get return agreements in place with Europe as part of a wider agreement particularly with France and Belgium and other countries, would need to include managed alternative things, for example, for people who've got family, who've got relatives in the UK. But it's got to include those return agreements with France. That, I think, is crucial to doing this.
If they did that, would Labour then support what the government is suggesting?
Well, I think if you did that, then you wouldn't need many of the things that the government's talked about, because that actually would be at the heart of it. So there are some things, for example, they're saying they need legislation for that they can actually do straight away. So returning people to Albania who've come from safe countries, they should be fast-tracking those cases and doing that now, rather than waiting for however long it's going to take to get legislation through, for whatever their new processes are. Get on with that now. They could do that straight away under the existing system, and they're not. Only 1% of last year's cases from Albania through small boats have actually been dealt with and processed. That is just nonsense.
But they're doubling the number of Home Office personnel who deal with those sort of applications in order to try to hurry that up.
Yeah, and that's the right thing to do. So we support that, but they're not fast-tracking safe country cases. I don't know why they're not, but they're currently just refusing to do that. And that's the obvious, logical thing to do. If you want to maintain confidence in the system, you also want to clear the backlog and not have huge numbers of people in inappropriate, costly hotels, which is just no good for anyone. So
well, they're trying to address that as well, aren't they, by opening up these military camps in order to hold people there.
And again, yeah, we've not seen any sign of those yet. There's been lots of toing and froing. They've talked about that for a long time. But what it looks like is because people will still arrive, under their new proposals, they won't take any asylum decisions on them, but they don't have anywhere to return them to. So actually, the risk is you're going to have tens of thousands of additional people just in the asylum system, just in still asylum accommodation and in hotels.
So only for 28 days, and then there'll be that's what the
yeah, I know that's what they said, but that's not what the bill does.
Entry denied.
I know that's what he says, but because he's got no return agreements in place, because he's not done that hard work with France and other countries, actually that's not going to happen. And all that will happen is at the end of 28 days, we've looked at the legislation, this is what it seems to say, at the end of 28 days, they'll just go back into an asylum hotel or asylum accommodation.
Or Rwanda.
With no, well, you know, at the moment they're saying that'll be 200 to 300 people, and you know, whenever the government said it's failing.
That's to start with. They can expand that.
Yeah, but Rwanda has said they would only take 200 to 300 people. So 45,000 people came last year, so it's a tiny proportion, and it's hugely expensive as well. I think, you know, the Home Secretary herself, I think, admitted it was failing, and the Home Office officials have said it's unenforceable and very costly and at high risk of fraud.
But why shouldn't economic migrants be sent from whence they came?
Well, I think they should. I mean, if people have come from Albania, they should be sent back. They should be returned to Albania because they've not fled persecution and conflict. I mean, that's what a fair system does. But at the moment, they're not being, because the government's not making the existing system work. And that, look, in the end, is my worry about all of this, that all they do is they go for government by gimmick. They set out another set of headlines, another set of new laws, and we had almost exactly the same law, 9 months ago. It hasn't worked, but they're not actually tackling the problem. And then they just make things worse by doing so. We really need them to get a grip. I hope that Rishi Sunak does get a better agreement with France this weekend. So I hope they will do that, and we would work with them on that. But we need to work on the practical things that will solve this so we can have those two things we want: border security and a properly controlled and managed refugee and asylum system.
When did you know that Sugré was speaking to the boss?
I didn't, I'm afraid. I've not been involved in any of those discussions, so I didn't.
Do you not find that surprising, that a job that is probably one of the most important jobs come government, and the head of or your boss was not talking to people like you in the inner circle?
To be honest, I think those are decisions for the leader. This is about, his chief of staff. It's about his office. So actually, I completely respect. I think that's rightly, those are decisions for Keir, not ones that he wants half the shadow cabinet, frankly, involved in.
What about the other half?
Or the whole of the shadow
cabinet.
There we go. Yes, right.
It's good to see you as always, Yvette. Thanks very much indeed. Thank you.